Legends in the galaxy did not begin with whispers. They began with wreckage, and every legend about Zayla of the Veil was born from the same scene, an empty star system littered with shattered fleets. No one saw her arrive. No one saw her fire. They only saw the aftermath. Ships broken open like eggshells, hulls warped and twisted as if some invisible giant had crumpled them in its fist. Crews were never found. Those who survived, the rare few who limped away in crippled escape pods, never spoke again. Some screamed at shadows until they tore out their own eyes. Some fell silent forever, their minds hollow. The galaxy gave this devastation a name: the Scream. It was not a weapon one could hold or aim or even block. It was a storm of thought, a psychic detonation that tore sanity apart and crushed matter as if reality itself bent to her will. Entire empires trembled at the idea that one being carried such power in her flesh, and that being was a woman. Her origins were lost to time. Some claimed she was the last of a species that destroyed itself with their own war machine. Others whispered she was not born at all, but manufactured by an ancient precursor civilization, an experiment gone horribly right. There were darker stories, too, that she had once been a child, chosen and bound to something that should never have been awoken, her life consumed by an eternal curse. Whatever the truth, Zayla of the Veil was now a ghostly figure drifting from system to system. She wore black armor scarred with centuries of battle. Her face was pale, marked with faint glowing lines like cracks of light under her skin. Her eyes were not eyes at all, but swirling storms of burning color, and those who stared too long into them swore they heard their own thoughts screaming. No fleet pursued her. No bounty hunter hunted her. She was the only outlaw in the galaxy no one dared collect a price on. Even the warlike Karathi, who would duel gods if they thought glory lay in the attempt, refused to speak her name in their halls. Planets closed their gates when her ship appeared in the sky. Stations shut down their docking bays, choosing to starve rather than risk letting her near. Entire trade routes bent away from her path like rivers forced aside by a stone too terrible to touch. Yet her curse carried something crueler than destruction: loneliness. Zayla could never stay. Never speak long with another soul, never share food or warmth or laughter. For anyone who lingered close enough to her for too long would feel it. The edges of the Scream leaking into their minds, like frostbite that starts in the nerves before it takes the flesh. She knew it. She bore it in silence. And so she drifted, her ship a solitary shadow, leaving ruin behind her not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. To the galaxy, she was a monster. To herself, she was a prison. And yet, as much as the galaxy feared her, they also feared something else. What if she was captured? Every empire, every council, every coalition across the stars whispered the same nightmare. If some warlord or dominion found a way to control her, the galaxy would kneel. One ship carrying Zayla was worth more than all the dreadnoughts of 10 civilizations combined. It was a balance built on fear. One woman too dangerous to destroy, too dangerous to use, and too dangerous to even approach. That was the state of things for centuries. A weapon sealed inside a woman, drifting endlessly until the day a human corvette stumbled across her in the ruins of the farthest system. It should have ended like every other encounter, with screams, wreckage, silence. But this time was different. Because among all the species who had trembled, there existed one strange, stubborn breed that had always been too reckless for its own survival: humans. And this particular human did not turn his ship around. He did not seal the hatches or prepare for a quick jump away. Instead, he gave a single order to his crew: dock us. The crew thought him insane. The galaxy would call him suicidal. But where every other race saw a nightmare, Captain Elias Kane saw something else in the drifting dark. Not a monster, not a curse, just a woman standing alone against the whole of creation. And for the first time in centuries, Zayla was about to meet someone who didn't fear her. The iron will slid through the graveyard of Farthest like a knife through ash. Broken cruisers tumbled in silence, their hulls cracked and burned. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers, the remnants of 3 armadas that had tried and failed to cage one woman. The crew of the corvette watched with pale faces. No one spoke above a whisper, as if raising their voice might summon the ghost that had done this. Most clutched their stations with white-knuckled hands, praying the captain would order a retreat. But Captain Elias Kane stood calmly at the helm, his dark uniform unbuttoned at the collar. His eyes locked on the drifting hulk at the center of the wreckage. It was unlike any ship in known registries. Its hull was jagged and scarred, black as obsidian with faint glowing seams that pulsed like veins. It wasn't shaped like a predator, nor like a transport. It was wrong, alien in a way no engineer would ever design, as if it had grown instead of being built. Every sensor officer begged him to jump. "Sir, we can't be here. She'll sense us." "Captain, we won't survive." Elias raised a hand, silencing them with a gesture. "If she wanted us dead, we'd already be dust." Then he said the words no sane commander would ever utter. "Dock us." A murmur of disbelief rippled across the bridge. Some thought they'd misheard. Others thought he was joking, though his voice held no trace of humor. His first officer leaned in, whispering urgently. "Captain, with respect, this is suicide. No one comes back from being near her." Elias didn't look away from the viewport. "That's the point. No one's tried talking to her." The docking clamps engaged with a groan, the iron will latching onto the alien vessel like a flea onto a dragon. Atmosphere equalized. The boarding corridor extended with a shudder. The air inside smelled of cold metal and ozone, as if lightning had scorched every surface. The crew braced for the captain to send in Marines. But Elias surprised them again. He took no squad, no weapons, no armor. He stepped forward with only a sidearm at his hip and left even that behind at the hatch. Helmet under one arm, boots striking the steel walkway, he crossed into the infamous ship as though he were entering a tavern. The interior swallowed him in silence. The walls pulsed faintly with light, veins of energy that shifted as if the ship itself were alive. Echoes of footsteps stretched far too long, as though sound bent unnaturally here. Then he saw her. Zayla of the Veil stood in the shadows of a vast chamber. She wore dark, battle-scarred armor that clung to her like a second skin. Her skin itself was pale, etched with glowing cracks of light, like something inside her body wanted out. Her eyes locked onto his, eyes that were not eyes at all but swirling storms of color, violet and blue and burning gold. The pressure hit him instantly. It was like a weight pressing into his skull, claws scraping his thoughts. His vision wavered, his pulse thundered, his instincts screamed at him to flee. This was the scream, the curse that made entire fleets collapse in terror. He clenched his jaw, forced his breathing steady, and took another step forward. Zayla tilted her head, almost curious. Her voice echoed inside his mind rather than through the air. "You are not screaming!" "Not yet," Elias answered, his voice steady. "I was hoping to say hello first." Her expression didn't change. Most would have collapsed by now, their sanity shredded by the storm in her presence. Yet this human stood in front of her as if it were nothing more than heavy weather. "You are different," she said slowly. He shrugged. "I get that a lot." There was a silence, stretching like the edge of a blade. She studied him as though waiting for the inevitable crack. For his eyes to go wide, for his body to twitch, for his mind to split apart. But it didn't happen. He just stood there, meeting her impossible gaze. Finally, Elias broke the silence. "You look like hell. Want a drink?" For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then, to his crew's astonishment, a sound rose from within the chamber. A sharp, unsteady laugh. A laugh that had not been heard in centuries. Elias should have died in that chamber. Any other being would have. But when Zayla laughed, the storm inside her dimmed for the briefest of moments, and the impossible happened. A conversation began. They sat across from each other in the alien vessel's dim mess hall, if such a place could be called that. The table was warped metal, the chairs scavenged from wrecks long gone. She did not eat, but she allowed him to. And while he sipped from a flask of Terran whiskey, she studied him like a puzzle. Humans, she said at last, her voice quiet but edged with power. You do not shatter. Not easily, Elias replied. He set the flask on the table, slid it across to her. Go on, try it. She didn't touch the drink. Her gaze pierced through him. Do you not understand what I am? Every other mind breaks before mine. Yours resists. That should not be possible. Elias leaned back. Maybe we're too stubborn to break. Or maybe we've been underestimated. That was the first truth he uncovered. Humanity's minds bent differently. Where other species had built-in psychic patterns that crumbled under her scream, humans had chaos, noise, a wildness that made them unpredictable. Hard to read, harder to break. She pressed harder against his thoughts. Curious, probing. Her psychic pressure surged like a tidal wave. Elias's head throbbed, his vision blurred, but he clenched his fists and ground his teeth until it passed. Sweat rolled down his temples, but he refused to fall. That defiance lit something in her eyes, something dangerous, something hungry, and then she told him what he had not expected. The Dominion comes, Zayla said. He frowned. The Drax? She nodded once. They hunger for power. They believe if they bind me, if they anchor me with their machines, they can direct the scream. They are wrong. It will devour them. But first, it will devour all who stand in their way. The words chilled him. The Drax Dominion were not whispers in dark taverns. They were the largest war engine in the Outer Arms, a coalition of reptilian clans bound by conquest, forever expanding. Their fleets were vast, their cruelty legendary. And now they wanted to put a leash on the most dangerous being alive. How close? Elias asked. Her eyes flickered, storms of light shifting in her irises. Closer than you think. They already send their scouts. Soon the main armada will move. He rose from the table, pacing. And Earth? They know of it, she said flatly. They know humanity resists. They will not allow resistance. They will come for your worlds as they come for me. That was the second truth Elias learned. Humanity was not a bystander. They were already in the crosshairs. Back aboard the Iron Will, his crew demanded answers. They had docked expecting to die, yet their captain now walked out alive, with the galaxy's most feared woman following him like a shadow. She's with us, Elias told them. The outcry was immediate. Officers shouted, engineers cursed, Marines nearly drew weapons. None of them wanted her near. They had heard the stories, seen the wreckage, and they felt her presence gnawing at the edges of their sanity. But Elias's voice cut through the chaos. Listen to me. The Dominion is moving. They're coming for Earth, for every colony we've built. Alone, we can't stop them. With her, maybe we can. The crew fell silent. They trusted him, though their fear lingered. It always would. Later, when the ship was quiet, Elias found her standing by the viewport, watching the stars. Her voice was almost a whisper. Why do you not run from me? Because everyone else does, he said simply. She turned toward him, those burning eyes unreadable. For a moment, she seemed less like a weapon and more like a woman exhausted from centuries of exile. That was the third truth Elias learned. Beneath the curse and the legend, she wanted, perhaps needed, someone who would not leave. And though neither of them said it, they both knew the same thing. The galaxy was on the edge of war. The Dominion would not stop. The only question left was whether humanity had the courage to stand with her or be the next wreckage drifting in silence. The Dominion didn't announce itself. It simply arrived. One morning, the outlying colonies in the Lorne Belt stopped transmitting. When Terran scouts jumped in, they found nothing but drifting husks, stations gutted, atmospheres vented, settlements slagged to glass. The survivors could be counted on one hand. By the time word reached Earth, 3 more colonies were gone. The Drax warlords didn't waste time with threats or negotiations. They devoured. And now they had set their eyes on the heart of human space. The Terran fleet scrambled. They were brave, but bravery meant little against numbers. Dominion war clusters were built like beasts, massive capital ships flanked by swarms of cruisers and raiders, each formation hungry for blood. For every Terran frigate, the Dominion fielded 10. For every dreadnought, they had 20. Humanity was outmatched, outgunned, outnumbered. At the War Council, voices clashed like steel. Admirals demanded reinforcements that did not exist. Envoys from allied species offered pity but no aid. None wanted to be near the woman Elias had brought into their chambers. When Zayla entered the room, silence fell like a guillotine. She didn't need to speak for her presence to press against them. One by one, alien ambassadors recoiled, eyes wide, throats tight. Even hardened veterans of Earth's Navy shifted uneasily, sweat forming on their brows. "She is not a soldier," one admiral hissed. "She is a weapon we cannot control." "Then let her be a weapon the Dominion regrets touching," Elias countered. His voice was steady, calm, but his eyes burned with the same fire that had carried him across the airlock to meet her. "If we run, Earth falls. If we fight alone, Earth falls. With her, we have a chance. One chance. I'll take it. The Council split." Half demanded her banishment. Half demanded her destruction. But Elias had already made the decision for them. He didn't ask permission, he asked only for ships. And so the raids began. Zayla became the spear point of the fleet. Where Dominion squadrons advanced, she met them head-on. Her scream cut through the void like a blade. Battle cruisers crumpled mid-flight, their crews tearing at their own eyes before their ships shattered. Elias's corvette, the Iron Will, moved with her like a wolf guarding a lioness, striking flanking ships, picking apart formations. But raw power was nothing without strategy. Elias turned every fight into a trap. He knew humanity couldn't win through brute force. Instead, he drew the Dominion into ambushes, asteroid fields, collapsing stars. Small packs of Terran ships harried supply lines, striking where they were weakest, then vanishing. Zayla's ship was always at the center, the terror that made Dominion admirals hesitate. Each battle won them breathing room, but also came at a price. Every time she unleashed the scream, Zayla staggered. Her hands trembled after the fight, her voice weakened. The weapon that had cursed her for centuries now devoured her from within. Still, she fought. Still, Elias stood at her side, anchoring her when her body nearly gave out. Sometimes he simply placed his hand over hers, grounding her against the storm. Sometimes, when her vision swam with fire, he was the only voice she could still hear. Steady, stubborn, human. The Dominion did not stop. They adapted. They sent larger fleets, thicker hulls, crews drugged and armored against psychic intrusion. The war escalated into an inferno. Whole sectors burned, yet for the first time in living memory, the Dominion bled. They had crushed countless civilizations, erased empires older than Earth, but here was a foe they could not predict. A species too reckless to surrender, a cursed woman too powerful to chain. Together, they struck blows no one thought possible. Across the galaxy, whispers began to change. Zayla was no longer only a monster. To the desperate, she was a nightmare turned against their common enemy. To some, she was hope, and to Elias, she was more than both. She was proof that humanity's strength was not its numbers, not its fleets, not its weapons. It was its refusal to fear what everyone else ran from. The war was only beginning, but already the galaxy had taken notice. Humanity had stepped into the fire, and with Zayla at their side, they burned brighter than anyone imagined. The sky over Earth darkened with war. 500 Dominion warships emerged from slip space in perfect formation, their hulls bristling with weapons, their engines burning with cold fury. They came not as raiders, not as conquerors, but as executioners. Behind them trailed carriers, troop barges, and planet burners, machines designed to strip worlds to ash. Earth's fleet waited. 300 ships at most, frigates, cruisers, a handful of aging dreadnoughts pulled from dry dock too soon. Against any other foe, the defense would have been formidable. Against the Dominion, it was a candle before a hurricane. Elias Kane stood on the bridge of the Iron Will, eyes fixed on the tactical hollow as red markers filled the system. His crew was silent, fear crawling through every breath. He didn't blame them. He felt it too. The weight of impossible odds pressing like gravity, but he also felt Zayla beside him. She looked fragile, almost human now. The scream had eaten away at her strength in battle after battle. Her armor hung loose, her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. Yet her eyes still burned with stormlight, and her voice carried the same steel. "If I release everything," she said quietly, "they will fall, but I will not return from it." Elias turned to her. He saw not the terror that the galaxy whispered about, but a woman who had carried a curse for centuries and still chose to fight. His jaw clenched. "You don't get to die alone. Not while I'm here." The comms flared alive. Admiral Vance, commander of Earth's defense, barked orders across the fleet. "Form lines. Shield carriers to the rear. Do not let them break through." The battle began. The first wave of Dominion cruisers slammed into the human line. Space lit with fire. Terran ships darted and weaved, firing every missile, every cannon, every rail slug. Explosions rippled across the void. But the Dominion's numbers pressed inexorably forward, their heavy capital ships carving gaps through the defense. Elias drove the iron will into the thick of it, weaving between dreadnought beams, striking vulnerable engines, pulling Allied ships out of ambushes. His voice was calm, steady, an anchor for his crew. But all the while, he felt the storm building inside Zayla, pressing at the edges of his mind like a rising tide. The second wave hit. Dominion raiders punched through the flanks, slicing apart human cruisers. One dreadnought's shields collapsed under concentrated fire and erupted into a cloud of molten metal. The Terran fleet reeled. For every Dominion ship destroyed, 10 more pressed forward. Earth's orbit began to fill with burning wrecks. "Elias," Zayla whispered, her voice fraying. "It has to be now." He looked at her, and in that instant, he understood. Her body couldn't hold the power much longer. If she let it loose, she would burn herself away. He reached out, took her trembling hand in his. The storm crashed against him, a tidal wave of raw psychic force, enough to shred a lesser mind. His skull pounded, blood ran from his nose, but he held on. He anchored her, as he always had. "Together," he said. And then the galaxy screamed. Light burst from her, a storm that devoured space itself. Dominion warships crumpled like tin, their crews writhing in madness before silence took them. Carriers split apart, dreadnoughts shattered, raiders disintegrated into debris. The psychic wave tore through the armada like a hurricane through glass. Elias's vision blurred, his thoughts nearly drowned in the torrent. But he clung to her hand, guiding her, keeping her from burning out too soon. His crew shouted in awe and terror as half the Dominion fleet disintegrated in moments, but the storm didn't stop. Zayla's body arched with agony, the glow beneath her skin burning brighter, cracks spreading across her armor. Her voice echoed in his mind. "I can't hold it!" "Yes, you can," Elias growled through gritted teeth. "I've got you." The storm surged one final time. A wave of light erupted outward, shattering the Dominion flagship into fragments that spun silently into the dark. Then silence. The survivors fled. What remained of the Dominion armada scattered into the void, broken, terrified, leaderless. For the first time in their bloody history, the Dominion had been routed. The bridge of the Iron Will erupted with cheers, but Elias barely heard them. His gaze was on Zayla, slumped against him, her stormlight flickering weakly. "You did it," he whispered. Her eyes, dim but still alive, met his. "No, we did." And then she went still. The battle was over. But the silence that followed was heavier than the clash of fleets. Wreckage drifted across Earth's orbit, Dominion hulks torn open, Terran cruisers burning, the shattered carcasses of war. The void was littered with the debris of sacrifice. Humanity had won, but at a cost so steep it was written in blood and metal across the stars. The bridge of the Iron Will was hushed. Officers moved as though in a dream, speaking in hushed tones, unwilling to break the fragile quiet. The cheers that had erupted moments after the Dominion fled had died away, replaced by exhaustion and grief. Elias sat slumped against the command chair, one arm wrapped around Zayla. She was lighter than she looked. Her strength bled away with the scream. The glowing cracks that had once blazed like rivers of fire were now faint scars etched into pale skin. Her breathing was shallow, but it was there. Against all odds, she lived. She stirred, her voice a faint whisper. "Why do you still hold me?" Because you're still here, Elias answered, his voice rough. And I don't let go of what survives. Her storm-lit eyes flickered open. She searched his face as though trying to find a reason for his defiance, his refusal to abandon her when the galaxy had fled. Finally, a faint, tired smile touched her lips. You are stubborn. Human, he corrected softly. In the days that followed, Earth reeled from the battle. Entire squadrons were gone. Families mourned. Cities sheltered the displaced from burned colonies. But humanity endured. For the first time in its young history among the stars, Earth had faced the worst the galaxy could throw at it, and had not only survived, but triumphed. The galaxy noticed. Where once whispers had painted Zayla as a monster, now those same whispers spoke of her as a savior. Tales spread across trade routes and hidden channels, of the cursed woman who had shattered the Dominion Armada, of the human captain who had stood by her side when all others trembled. In alien halls where her name had once been spoken with dread, it was now spoken with awe and fear of a different kind. Because if humanity could endure her, what else could they endure? Elias refused medals, though many were offered. He refused monuments, though councils begged to build them. His answer was simple. The victory wasn't mine, it was ours. He visited the wounded, spoke with the families of the fallen, and reminded them that sacrifice was the price of freedom. His words carried weight because he had lived them. As for Zayla, she remained by his side. Weaker now, stripped of much of her curse, but for the first time in centuries, she was free of constant isolation. She could walk among others without breaking them. Children stared at her glowing scars with curiosity instead of terror. Where she had once been a weapon, she was now something rarer, a symbol. One evening, aboard the repaired Iron Will, she asked him the question that had haunted her since their first meeting. Why did you stay? Everyone else ran. You could have too. Elias looked out the viewport, where Earth shone blue against the stars, scarred but alive. He answered without hesitation. Because you weren't the monster they feared. You were someone waiting for a hand that wouldn't let go. Humanity. We don't turn away from the impossible. We face it. She was silent for a long time, then placed her hand over his. This time there was no storm pressing against his mind, no curse lashing out, just warmth. The Dominion fractured in the years that followed. Word of their defeat at Earth spread like wildfire, emboldening suppressed worlds to rise in rebellion. Without their grand armada, their grip weakened, and through it all, a legend took root in galactic memory, not of a lone, cursed woman who drifted in silence, not of a human captain too reckless to fear, but of a moment when the two stood together against the tide and held. A story passed from world to world, in 1,000 tongues always ending the same way. Where all others trembled, one human reached out his hand, and the galaxy would never be the same.